Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I'm on chess.com right now, and I'm going to review a game that was played by one of my friends on the site. This is the game between Knight Chaser, rated 1660, playing on the white end, and the opponent, Swift End, rated 1636. This was a 10-0 time control game. The game lasted 40 moves. I've already gone through this game with the help of Stockfish 8. Hopefully this is something you too are doing after you play, especially those who are playing slower games, even just analyzing for a little bit of time to see what you maybe missed out on, especially tactically. Well, that's a good idea. You will improve as a player over time. So let's just dive right in here. D4, C5, and Old Benoni. Do I have any issues with what's been played so far? I don't. No issues, no issues, no issues. Until here. C3. Move 4. What's my big issue with C3? Well, why not C4? Is there a good answer to that question? You really don't have a good answer to why not C4. There's no reason that pawn should not be on C4. In fact, if you're on C3, this knight is not too happy. He wants to be on C3. I wonder if maybe white is in this mentality where, you have a pawn on D4 and the game started out with D4, D5, and eventually knight F3, C5, and then something like C3. This is a different story. The C pawn helps to do what? Reinforce your central point D4. But in this position, in the game position, D4, C5, there is no pawn on D4. C3 is not necessary to control D4. He could do one better. And this tells me a real lot. I know you're just 4 moves in, but if I'm playing on the black end and I see my opponent play C3, this is telling me a lot. It's giving me a lot of information about how white will deploy their pieces, in what order white will deploy their pieces. What am I talking about exactly? Well, I already know where the knight's going. He's not going to go to A3. This would just allow black an opportunity to shatter the queenside structure. White would be saddled with instances of isolated pawns on the queenside. It's a complete wreck. He's going to have to go to D2. So I know that. I could already anticipate the knight's going to be on D2. And if he goes to D2 first, he's blocking in the bishop. If white doesn't want to have the bishop blocked in, well, now I know the order. Now I know that the bishop must be deployed first, F4 or G5, and only then knight to D2. This gives black too much information. This is a case where white is, in a way, stepping on his own toes. The knight is the one who really wants to be on C3. A nice, simple way to coordinate would be C4, let's say knight F6, and knight C3. We might regard these knights right here as being at max strength. They're in these key 16 squares of the board. This little instance right here, pawn on C4, knight on C3, good coordination. That's how I view that. Just these two pieces right here. Pawn on C4, knight on C3, good coordination. The pawn supports a knight jump to both D5 or B5 one day. Okay, we didn't have that. C3, knight F6, no issues. Bishop G5, natural enough. Pinning the knight to the queen, and black castles. But wait, bishop G5 is actually a game-losing move. There's a missed tactical idea here. Bishop takes f2. Followed up with knight to e4. And that's pretty much the ball game. Black's up a pawn. White is uncastled. Missed tactical shot on f2. We have one attacker and one defender, so Black's eyes should be on the lookout for these little tricks on f2. In fact, Black could get fancy if he really wanted. Playing first knight to e4, saying, you take my queen, I'll take your king. Anyhow, this was something both players missed. Castles. Knight to d2. Bishop e7, okay, just breaking the pin on the knight on f6. It's not necessary right now to do that. For the next handful of moves, neither player felt it necessary or gave enough value, it seemed, to establishing a pawn in the center, placing a pawn on one of the on the fourth rank, on their own fourth rank. Why not e4 for white? Why not d5 for black? This would be a little bit better, but okay. It's an okay move, bishop to e7, breaking the pin. You could also ask him a question first. Maybe white will just take the knight. If he backs up, I wouldn't recommend playing something like this. That would be really weakening, but at least you could maybe reason, well, I have more long-term a flight square on h7. I still think it's maybe a little bit too early to do a move like h6, but bishop to e7, okay, we'll go with that. Queen to c2, I have an issue with because it's so early, and I really don't know that we can say with confidence that the queen will be safe on c2. For example, there's already present in this position half-open files. Half-open file for white, half-open file for black. We can expect a black rook to one day be on c8, and how does this pawn feel? I'm really picking on this c-pawn a lot, I realize. One day he's going to be pinned. That is going to be a pinned pawn. He's going to be powerless. And there, you could foresee a knight maybe jumping into b4 one day, striking at the queen. It's too early to deploy the queen on c2, but white has something in mind with this. We're going to see that. First b6, okay. Queenside castle, so this is the idea. And this is a big move. What do I mean by big move? I don't mean this is a good move when I say that. I mean, this is a big decision. I mean, we had the queen, the king on the queen side for white, opposite sides castling position. So, is this good or bad? I can't really get behind this decision. You know, I could point out throughout this game all the little tactical ideas that are missed because I used an engine and I had help with that. But these points right here, it's going to read as okay in the engine's eyes. But this isn't something that a human should be playing. Maybe a computer could get away with something like this, but you shouldn't be going queenside. Why not? Why not? This is the thing that I'm trying to get at. Black already has a half-open file to work with. Okay, when we have cases of opposite sides castling, the idea here should be to create open lines towards the enemy king. This is a big piece of criteria you really need to look into as white. Moreover, your two most valuable pieces are now on this half-open file. And it's just not a good idea. Black is going to be a lot faster with attacking the white king. So something better would include e4, bishop d3 or e2, and kingside castle. Okay, white went queenside. Black should be the better side. That I would prefer to play black here if I see a a move like queenside castle. It's just the knight jumping on c6, knight to b4, pins on the c file. 2-1 majority in the center, though. At the present moment, there's nothing in the center, the 4 center squares just yet, but they have the potential. Black has the potential to occupy the center with a couple pawns. Okay, bishop a6. I guess this is okay. Black is trying for a light square bishop exchange, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with placing him on the longest diagonal on the board. e4. There go the light square bishops. Knight c6, good. Both black knights are perfect. If there's one knight that I don't like, it's this guy on d2. I really, as white, I want to get this guy moving. Not because he's not in these key 16 squares of the board, but until this knight moves, this rook has a blindfold over his eyes, right? This knight's just in the way. What was played next is h3, so I see what the idea here is with h3. White has the idea, and we see this take action in the game. Both sides start launching their pawns at the enemy king. h3 and g4. But why are you launching pawns towards the enemy king? What's the end? What do you want to get from that? What do you hope to accomplish by advancing these pawns? It's pawn tension, pawn captures, and in the end, open files. We want the rooks to be able to function directly towards the enemy king, just like black is able to immediately, playing rook to c8. The issue I have with h3 is that where will there eventually be pawn tension? h3, let's just say white had like 4 moves in a row to move kingside pawns. h3, g4, h4, h5, h6. And in the end, black makes one move and says, nope, I'm not going to have this position open up. I'm going to keep things closed. So it took a ton of moves, and there's no guarantee that the position is going to open up on the king side. So what am I getting at? I think white needs to be more direct. Take action in the center. You don't necessarily have to be locked in to this idea of trying to create open lines towards the enemy king. What about making an improvement with one of your pieces? What about taking some direct action in the center, throwing some direct punches? e5 is a move to look at. Throwing a punch at the knight, knight d5, and then what? Knight to e4. Look at this. Another instance of pawn on e5 and e4. Just as I was pointing out, pawn on c4, knight on c3. Now we have a case of a pawn on e5 and a knight on e4. So these guys are coordinated well. And look at that d6 square. We can expect a dark square bishop exchange. And how about a knight on d6? That would be fantastic. It's talking about a rook going on c8. Well, maybe the knight says, no, you're not going to be able to do that. So this would be a better approach, a more direct approach, because there's nothing for these white pawns to bite at. It would be a different story if black had a pawn on h6, right? Because then we put a pawn on g5, and what do we have? Immediate pawn tension and a great likelihood that the king side is cracked open. Not the case here. Not the case just yet. h3 in the game. Rook to c8. Good. King b1. Good. Gonna have to get the king off of that half-open file. You're probably gonna have to get the queen off of that file as well. h6. I have an issue with that. This is allowing white to create this pawn tension. Now's not the time to play a pawn up next to your king, because this will allow a g4, g5 idea. What's better? d5. d5 black did play, but only after weakening their king position with h6. only after making life a little bit easier for white to create a pawn break on the king side did black now play d5. So black should do without h6, d5 straight away, far better. This is providing white now a hook, a way to crack open the king side. d5 on board, chop, 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 chop. Queen to e4. Not really a fan of queen to e4. Well, it is getting off of this file, but what's maybe something better? I kind of like moving the knight out of the way of the rook so he can see, or maybe even trying for g4, g5 right now. But, okay, I could see why you would maybe want to make a move like queen to e4, but I would really like to keep that square open for the knight. Okay, queen e4 it is. b5, that's a good move. Looking for a pawn break, maybe not only the c file's opened up, but if the b pawns are exchanged, well, then black has two really nice files to work with. g4, now this will be hitting, and pretty fast. b4 is met with now c4, looking to keep things closed. That's a nice reaction. What does black do? Backs up, knight b6. This is a pretty deep tactic, but black can actually jump into c3 here. I'll just show you quickly. Knight b3. Queen a3 is threatening mate, and it's... wow, there's not a lot of different ways you could be defending against queen to b2. You have to drop your queen back to one of these two. Going to c2 allows knight to b4, and if you're going to e2, he can still jump in, and now we just have these pieces inching closer to the king. This is one of the things that, well, when we have a case of opposite sides castling, don't feel like you need to hang on to all of your material. Black had an opportunity to invest some material, and what did black get in return? Open files. There's a completely open B file, and some pieces are now clearly swarming next to the white king here. Coordinated very well. All of these squares are being observed. The threat here is c2, the fork. Rook c1, rook takes c4, take the rook, we got mate. Black is renewing this threat of c2, so this would be a winning, this would have been a winning shot for black, but it's a bit involved. This knight c3 move. Knight b6 in the game. h4, a5. This is really not necessary. Well, it feels like it's a little bit too slow. White is clearly hitting much faster here. Maybe a better idea is to occupy this open file, or you have to be pretty delicate here. Now, this is an interesting moment. G6 is maybe something you could get away with. The idea being you could now meet G5 with H5, and you can meet H5 with G6. You have to be really delicate. You have to weigh an idea like this in the game. But I'm not sure what the computer is saying with that. I didn't look at this line with the engine, but this is sometimes an idea. Having two pawns on the same rank for each side like this, you could kind of keep things closed. G5, H5, H5, G5, keeping things closed. This seems a bit too slow, A5. G5 is hitting fast, and now H5 is met with G6. So this pawn has come quite a ways and is now a tremendous thorn in black's side. If you take, well, there's now G5, E5 jumping points, an open file to work with, and it seems like black is close to get mated. Queen takes G6, knight G5, queen H7. Black doesn't capture the pawn, instead plays F5. I think that's a good reaction. Queen to e2, I think that's a good reaction as well. White has their sights on the h5 pawn. Move the knight, sweep the queen into h5, and then mate on h7. a4, this is a little bit too slow. Black has to be very timely here and address this thorn. This is something Black didn't appreciate at this point. Trying to take out that pawn. Playing a4 is once more a bit too slow here. White's attack is now coming very fast with knight to g5 and queen to h5. What would be better than a4 is to move the rook. Suggests rook to f6, attacking the pawn, but not only that, this is kind of tricky to see, but the knight is actually the one who will one day control h7. He's looking to sweep over to f8. It's often said, what's that line? I think Mikhail Tal said, a knight on f8, no mate. He's a good defender on that f8 square, controlling h7. So this would be a nice defensive resource for Black. We didn't have that. Instead, something more natural-ish with a4, just launching pawns, continuing to launch the pawns towards the white king. Knight g5, this is now winning for white. How does play follow? We have queen to h7. This is something white should not do, as tempting as that is. I can recall being in a similar position and the temptation to, it's really close to mate, right? If this move right now, okay, that's checkmate, so what is Black's last move doing? Opening up a square for the king. It's really close to mate, but it's not quite working. In fact, at this moment here, Black would already be winning. You know, this ensuing check, well, your queen just has to, like, run away. And before you know it, that A pawn that I was saying, well, it's a little bit too slow. Well, given just one more move, Black will be winning with A3 and converging on the B2 square. It's tough to, there is no good defense against something like that. So, well, my point here is that Queen H7, I don't know that she's any better on H7 than she is H5. In fact, I would, in a way, like to keep this square open for the knight. For the moment, the king he can't run away to F8 because there would be a fork of the king and queen. So something better would be to get the rook doing something. This is the one piece that is contributing not at all on White's side. White needs a little bit more attacking pieces against the Black king, and this is a good move. Rook to e1, and if a3, now we could go in for this check, and the idea is that e6 now collapses with rook takes e6, and White is the winning side here. One or two lines. Here's one. Queen takes, rook will be met with first queen takes pawn, getting out of the line of fire, and then you pick up the queen. And here's another. This one's a bit more lengthy. There's queen takes rook. Knight to e4 first, trying to take out the queen with the minor piece. Queen d4, and a lot of in-between moves. Knight c4, knight f7, and eventually you pick up a full rook. But this kicks off with first rook to e1 at this moment right here, not being tempted to jump into the h7 square. It's better to hold off and realize there really isn't going to be a good follow-up move once the queen is on h7, and once more, maybe the knight wants to one day make use of that square. This queen is a pretty good defender. You know, if this pawn wasn't defended, this idea of a check, and once the king moves here, the queen can take on g7, that's a different story. Sometimes you would see that, but in this case, the queen is really a really good defender. g7, and, well, she's not just a defender. She has aggressive intentions on the queen side. Okay, well, this wasn't played. White goes in for queen h7, king f8, knight to f3, and now it's black who is in the driver's seat here. There's many pieces swarming next to the black king, but things have turned here. And black is the one who is really quick to attack the king. In fact, after knight to f7, black could ignore this and play a3, saying you take the rook, I take your king. Black reacted. This is still winning for black. Check. King there. Knight to g5. This seems really active, but these knights are just kind of, I don't know. There isn't just not a good way to get at the king, surprisingly enough. There's only one intersection square on d8. Both the knight and queen are observing that, but that's canceled out. Black has plenty of defense against any piece jumping on d8. And after a3, this is just gone. White isn't able to recover here. They make the best move. Queen to f8, giving up the queen, and following up with the fork just to eliminate the queen. And then trying something on the king side here, trying to get a passed pawn. So this is a nice try, but it's, from this point on, always winning for black. They swarm in nice with these two knights. White is ready to promote. Inserts a check first on b2, takes on a2. There's a mate in 2 like this, but either way, this is also winning. Rook takes a2, rook g3, and this one is played out right to move 40. Rook a1, mate. Both sides had their chances in this one. I hope there was some interesting points with this. The big decision, well, that wasn't the biggest decision, but c3, just these little details early on. You may be giving away a little bit too much information with a move like this. c3, also going for queenside castle. I mean, this is the biggest decision of the game. Opposite sides castling. The element of time is immediately one of, if not the biggest factor, one of the biggest factors in opposite sides castling positions. Timing. Who will be faster to attack one another's king? As we saw, I was saying this a pawn move by black is maybe a little bit too slow right here, and right here it's a little bit too slow, but eventually things turned with just one wrong slip right here, knight to f3, and it's black who is now generating the threats. Once a3 hits, White has to go in for something fancy like this to survive for just a handful more of moves. But I thought that this was an interesting game to go over. Do know that I used I ran 2 engines at the same time when I was reviewing this. This is something that I would recommend you do as well. Lets you know in those cases, in some cases in the game, when there is an only move present in the position. If you're seeing a +4 and the other top move is reading as 0, there's an only move present in the position. So I would recommend doing that if you are reviewing your games. But anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I will catch you soon. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.